ahead and get started. We are about 5 minutes after. But once again, I've said this in every meeting that I've seen all of you in. Thank you so much for spending so much time with us this week. It's critical to not only this piece that we're doing, but the rest of the project. And again, if you don't remember, my name is Aaron, and this is Ben. What we're going to share with you tonight is one piece of the larger project that we are continuing to work on with you all. And as we've been here the last 4 days, we've been kind of shifting gears back and forth between the different components. Spent Monday night with our steering committee continuing the discussion about the visioning process. We had a lot of one-on-ones the last time we were here that kind of kicked off the visioning. We're still working on that, but we spent a lot of time on that this week as well. If you were at the meeting last night here, I shared with you all some of the preliminary market research that we're doing as part of the comprehensive market analysis and business development strategy that we're doing. So that's the second piece. The third piece, in some of the meetings you may have seen our coworker T. Coker. He has been helping us with the technical side of wayfinding. In fact, Ben's going to share a little bit of that with you all tonight. But what we're here to talk about tonight is the branding and marketing piece, the community identity, the market position for Ware, and then some marketing strategies that we have and recommendations for that. We'll keep you to right at an hour or so like we've always promised you in these meetings. And we're excited about what we've been able to come up with, and I hope you are too. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Ben.
Great. How's everybody doing? All right, I promise I'll do my best to make this entertaining for the next 55 minutes. As you can imagine, we heard some things that were repeated in every single meeting. We heard that the community is a traditional one, and they like that traditional small town feel. We heard a lot about the value of the architecture of the community. We heard a lot about the reality that there's a huge perception gap. You have a very, very negative external and internal perception. People are beat down. They see negative stories on the news. They are constantly fed negative side, but there is no engine to help effectively tell the positive side. And that's exactly what we're doing today. We're creating a system that's going to be cross-organizational, cross-event that will allow everybody to speak off the same stage, even though they might have different messages and different target markets. So what we wanted to do was we wanted to create a communication foundation. And I'm going to kind of walk you through step by step and show you and explain to you the decisions that I made all along the way. We really feel like there are 4 main components that build this identity system: typefaces, colors, graphics, and message. So we're going to start with typeface. Now, as I said, in every single meeting, people used the word traditional. And traditional kind of lands us in a category of typefaces. So what we did was we selected 3 different typefaces that we can use in our overall system. The primary typeface is a typeface called Klepper Standard Display. It's an extremely attractive typeface. It's very traditional, but it also has some contemporary shape to it. And you can see that in the M. You can see it a little bit in the way that the A is shaped. Now, the reason that I say that is typeface is a huge consistency tool. Once we identify a uniform typeface and we create what we call a word type, every single time we say Ware, we show that graphically, we want it to look the same way. So you have some unique challenges in your name. Believe it or not, creating something that looks really good with only 4 letters can be challenging because there's not as much character, there are not as much letters. So in addition to that, when you combine a short word with a letter like W, W is a very, very difficult capital letter because sometimes typefaces try to get really, really fancy. I'll show you on the next slide. We selected a contemporary sans serif as a secondary typeface so that in certain applications we can create a nice dynamic. It's okay, you can make that face. This is a secondary typeface. It only appears very, very tiny. So it is a complementary typeface. The reason you do this is because typefaces like this are called content neutral. They don't actually carry personality, so they're not going to conflict with the primary. And then we selected a script style accent typeface. Now, just to talk a little bit about, so you can kind of see at the top, that's the typeface we selected. It's a very, very attractive representation of the name. We went through, honestly, I went through hundreds of typefaces. You see a lot of crazy things that might happen. You might walk down a road where, say, we've got an industrial background, we want something that's kind of heavier, but that didn't really look right. It looked okay, but the expandability was just so heavy. You might say we're a community with a river. It might be nice to have a little bit of curvature in that W, but then the thing about typefaces like this is they date very, very quickly. So as soon as you have made investment and gotten them into the public space, they begin to look old already. Of course, this looks way too futuristic and is horrible. And then even more traditional typefaces like this, you can get some crazy things going on with that W that they just overcomplicate it. So we felt real good about landing on that primary. And then also one of the nice benefits of it is it has extremely attractive numbers. And that sounds stupid, believe it or not. They're really, really nice. So that's your founding date, represented in the typeface. So from typeface, we move over into color palette. What I like to do with colors is I like to derive the colors from the community itself. So that when somebody says, why did you pick that color? I can say, because those are the colors that you see when you're in the community. So what I actually do is I take a series of photos and then I color sample those photos and see what colors repeat themselves over and over again. And the colors that we landed on really are mainly a 4-color palette. They have dark, deep, kind of rich browns. They have brick, they have greens, and they have blues. The greens are leaning towards that copper patina, though. It's not a strict, rich Kelly green. They make for a very, very nice complementary palette. But in addition, because of the way that we approach some of the graphics, you'll see we had to have both darker and lighter variations of all those families. Now, the next thing that I wanted to look at was graphics. And to me, one of the things that really struck me and hit me was just the architecture. And the architecture community is stunning. And I had somebody in one of our focus group meetings make a real interesting point. She said, if you just looked at our community from the storefront up, it's one of the most beautiful communities you'll ever go to. And so what we really wanted to do from a graphic standpoint was we really did kind of want to reinforce and reinvigorate that value on the architectural integrity of the community. So we started out with a source image like this, and what I did was I created a custom, what's called vector illustration. This graphic is you can make this as big as you want or as small as you want. And then also being able to create one-color versions of that. So again, it works. Now, this simply sets the stage. It wouldn't be right if the only image that I did was that town hall tower, but it sets that tone. So you can see a little bit about what our thoughts were with typeface. You can see a little bit about what we were thinking with color and where that was derived from, and then from our approach to graphics for the community. The next thing that we always do is message. And with that, we create what we call a brand statement. I'm going to read that for you now. We are Ware, Massachusetts. We're a town with unique and storied history, beginning with our Native American ancestors, whose salmon fishing wares along the river gave us our name. We grew up around the historic Ware Center meeting house that provided us both a place of worship and for community. Our meeting house still stands as one of the most important rural structures in Massachusetts and a testament to our early resolve to build a thriving community. We are a mill town whose textile factories lined the Ware River and brought prosperity and growth to our small village. While the mills have closed, the sturdy buildings stand today at the mill yards as a reminder of our industrial past and resilient character. Today, we are an economic and cultural center, a place where unique businesses and historic churches serve a large rural region. We are the front door to the Pioneer Valley, known for its beautiful landscapes of picturesque meadows, rolling hills, and traditional New England villages. We are also a community of pioneers and innovators, with businesses like the American Athletic Shoe Company, Kanzaki Paper, and Country Bank, who provide products and services to our citizens, our country, and the world. This is Ware. This is a community of active places and people where residents enjoy a lifestyle defined by youth sports, lively events, and spirited gatherings. This is a place where healthy lifestyle is afforded through the exceptional care at the Bay State Mary Lane Hospital, the outdoor opportunities of the pastoral Grenville Park, and the active options of the Ware River Rail Trail and our local parks. This is the base camp for the outdoor enthusiast, as the Quabbin Reservoir and its tributaries provide our people with a diversity of experiences ranging from pleasant views and vistas of our natural resources and wildlife to more vigorous adventures such as hiking, biking, boating, and fishing. We are aware. We are a place where our citizens are becoming more aware of the quality of life our community affords. A place where we are building a new success story every day. Whether it is the quality of our school system or our growing arts center, we are learning more each day about the things we sometimes take for granted. Though the grassroots efforts of organizations like the Ware Business and Civic Association, we can communicate the exceptional quality of life defined by our schools that are cultivating young minds, our hospital that is providing a level of care second to none, our town, which gives us a safe place to live and work, and our businesses that offer all the products and amenities we need. We are resilient, where the motto of the town that can't be licked is ingrained in our history and culture. We are dedicated, and our independent spirit thrives in our local businesses, cultural anchors, and involved citizens. We are striving, as evidenced by our schools, town, and community partners who are building a better quality of life for our citizens. We are committed, as our efforts to revitalize and improve our community are being realized on a daily basis. We are Ware, Massachusetts, somewhere worth seeing. So, when you bring all of that together, you land on this concept that is all based off of a foundation understanding that we have to reintroduce this community to people. We selected 4 different icons across the top: the meeting house, the mill falls, the town hall tower, and the covered bridge as picturesque elements that would be attractive both to locals and visitors. We see how it all kind of begins to come together, but the thing that I really want you to understand is this was derived off the fact that we have to tell the story. Because if we don't tell the story, we're going to allow the negative stories to make our personality and our identity. So we start there, and I want to immediately kind of jump in and kind of talk about this as the destination identity. This is not a new town logo. This is an identity for this community, shared among public and private sectors. So as you can see, we start with what we call the primary identity system, full color, works both in reversed and in standard, but then we also immediately start to jump into variations of that, more simplified uses. We have a horizontal, we have stacked versions, vertical, different ways that we can present this community. Now you can even see over here on the side, we have one variation that says Ware on the river. Now, again, we heard a lot of talk about we've got to reconnect with the river. We've got to reconnect with the river. But realistically, we also have to first develop those amenities that allow people to connect with the river before we can go out there and proudly kind of fly that banner. So, what that does is that goes ahead and positions us down the road to be able to use that as we are marketing the river as a magnetic draw. The nice thing about a system like this is the simplicity of the graphics allow it to be used in one color, allow it to be used in black and white, so we have all those various variations built into it. But then we also move in and we begin to look at the additional destinations. So we use those series of custom illustrations to then create logos for the destinations that might draw people here, whether it's the meeting house, whether it's the covered bridge. And I will say the covered bridge and that whole area around Hardwick / Gilbertville / I don't know if I've ever been to a place where you drive down a road and it's like you're constantly passing welcome to signs for different places. It's like, you know, welcome to it's pretty interesting. You know, the Mill Yards, you've got a very, very interesting district over in the Mill Yards. And to be completely honest with you, the Mill Yards fascinated me because when you drive past it the first time, you get an overwhelming sense of a high level of dilapidation. When you get out and you actually explore it and you see it building by building, there's actually more that's really nice than not. So that visual impact of some of those structures that need help are actually eating up the positive equity that the really nice experiences offer. So I believe that the Mill Yards offers an extremely important opportunity for the community. And I mean, there's some structures down there that if I had enough money, I would go and start picking stuff up today, because there's some interesting things going on there. Again, being able to take the same approach to graphics and create these variations of different things in the community that you've said are important, being able to tie in different parks as destinations and being able to kind of tell those stories, but then also being able to have identities that use those same colors, same typefaces, and same general approach to graphics to create their own organizational identities. The first that we wanted to do was we wanted to create an identity for the Business and Civic Association. And we wanted that to be one of ultra professionalism. Because to be honest with you, that organization, it really is an economic development engine for this community. And that's a great thing. It should be. It is taking a very, very holistic approach to stimulating and growing the economy. So, you know, going through and creating something that helps to kind of tell that story. But the thing that's funny about this is I want to remind you, this is just an organizational logo. This is not the logo that we're using to promote the place. It's not the logo that we're going to try to use to get somebody to come down here and visit or somebody to shop. This logo tells people who did it. This logo is used to help recruit support, to help recruit, you know, investors, and to give businesses and property owners in the downtown the understanding that there is a group that's moving the community forward. Now, you can start to see from there, you know, showing things like letterhead and business card. You can really get dynamic, and you can have some fun with the way that those things look and feel. Now, from that, I jump over and I talked a little bit about not being the town logo. Well, the town has a very, very well-seated seal. And the last thing in the world that I want to do is change that. But the thing that I did notice was two things. First of all, the consideration of what the typeface that coupled with that seal was, there was very, very little consistency there. And in addition, as I talked to people in town government, there also seemed to be a lack of accessibility to the full range of logos that you really need. So because of that, you end up creating a whole lot of different variations. So what I did was I created a modified system that gives us a full color version of the seal that is actually the painting that you got over at Town Hall, and then a simplified true one color that can be reproduced over and over, and then simply coupled it with the word type. The nice thing about something like this is it does not require the town to replace anything. This is, since it is all in the same family, you simply roll this out as needed. You roll it out when you need to purchase something new, if you're getting a new vehicle and you've got to put graphics on it, or if you're ordering new business cards, that kind of stuff. Town can have a nice, long, rolling launch on that. Now, the next thing that we heard about was the school district and telling the story of the schools. So I wanted to start by simply creating an identity for the school district. Here, I use the green. Yeah.
Just a question. Now, this is obviously changing the color palette.
I don't know why it wouldn't fly. The school color is completely different from what we're doing here. The school color is completely different from what we're doing here. The greens that they use are completely complementary with the system that we have, but you need to be able to have a palette that creates connectivity between the community itself. And the green is something that the schools in the school district own. And that's good. That's complete. I mean, it's not like we're recommending that they change their green, you know. So I don't think that that's a problem at all. I think that if what you do is you dictate that the color of the school district has got to be the color of the community, then you have now directly tied all perceptions between the two without creating any separation between those two. One of the things I will tell you is as we created that palette, we wanted to make sure that the greens were complementary so that they could sit right alongside each other. So, you know, we started with that school district and then we moved over and we designed variations on high school logo and high school athletics. And here is where we start to see some of the combination of their green and ours. So that, you know, as they go through, those might be some things that they start to consider. There really isn't a high school logo. There's a high school, you know, there's the Indian, but there is no standardized identity for the high school itself. So they can very easily use that word type as a connective tissue. Then even looking at things like the Historical Society. And again, you start to see where you create this connectivity between these organizations, but you also give them the opportunity to kind of own their own space. Now, we really feel like, this is a little different for us, but we really feel like what you need to do is you need to think about having 3 campaigns. And the 3 different campaigns have 3 different purposes. So the first campaign is called We Are Ware. We Are Ware is a strict community pride campaign. The goal of this is to get these stories about your community, the progress and the things that are happening out to your own citizens. Because it does not matter how successfully you market to outside markets, if your locals do not believe in the community, then those efforts have been, you know, more or less wasted. The second campaign we're calling Ware. And this is a focus on telling the story of the changes in growth and education in the community. And I think that's something we heard a lot about. We think that, you know, obviously we heard a lot about safety issues. The safety issues I think are driven off of real world data. The skepticism about the quality of the school district does not really seem to be reinforced, in fact. The schools seem to be better than the community perceives them to be. So what we need to do is we need to launch a campaign. This campaign needs to be focused both at local residents as well as regional realtors, if we're being honest. Because those folks, you know, if somebody does manage to land a job in Ware and starts to look for houses, the first time a realtor says, oh, you don't want to live there. Crime's bad and their schools are horrible. Well, guess what? You've lost a potential resident and tax base. So having that targeted campaign. And then finally, the third is called This Is Ware. This is the destination development campaign. This is the one where we really start to show what all you have to offer. Now, with those 3 campaigns, we've seen destination, we've seen organization, but where it really starts to sing is when it makes its way into the events as well. The events are the positive experiences that people have with the community. So what to do is, again, you know, using those same bases You can go through, you can create identities, whether it's things like the farmer's market, whether it's concerts in the park, and, you know, bring in graphics for the bandstand. Going through and branding that fall festival as a huge event, and it brings people into the community. The weird thing is, I would be willing to bet that there are people that come to this community, they come to the festival, they have a great time at the festival, they come year after year, and then they turn right around and say, there's nothing that happens in Ware. We see it all the time, because what ends up happening is the identity of the event becomes a vacuum. All positive experiences stay inside the realms of that event instead of being deposited back onto the community and the community earning that credit. So, you know, again, the thing that's nice about this is from the colors, the typeface, the approach to graphics, you have tremendous flexibility. You don't have the exact same formula every single time. Simply using the typeface can bring you into the system. Simply using the colors can bring you into the system. And you can have fun with those different identities, and because events are interesting and they are different from one another. So then we start to look at things like collateral materials. And this is anything from, you know, shopping bags, reusable shopping bags. One of the interesting things that I heard here, or didn't hear here, I guess is the best way to say it, is typically when I work in a community, I hear a lot of complaints about people saying that they have to leave town to get stuff. They have to leave town to buy things. And I think that you've got an interesting dynamic here that is a combination of having a pretty broad spectrum of things that you can get here, combined with being able to kind of modify your needs so you don't feel like you're constantly needing things that you can't get here. But I think that I felt like that was a very strong point of pride. A lot of times if people constantly are having to get in their cars and drive 30 minutes every single week to get stuff, it makes them not feel as good about the community. And for some reason, I didn't feel like I heard that as much as I normally do. So I think that's a good thing. Being able to do things like that shopping pieces, so even if they are going out of market, they can still show off where they're from. Creating very, very attractive marketing pieces like a destination guide. I chose to do a slightly different format on this. So it's a 3.667 inches by 9 horizontal instead of vertical. This could be a really, really great way for, as we go through this piece, to kind of show off some of the vantage points. A historic walking tour, being able to tell the stories of these buildings that are so well preserved, and the stories that are interesting. And then even being able to take this and use it to talk about things like the library. And, you know, being able to have this kind of standard approach, it makes it very, very easy to figure out how you might be able to roll in. Now, next I want to talk for a little bit about signage. Most of you might have seen T. Coker, who was here with us. He spent a lot of time on the ground, spent a lot of time driving around, also walking around. He collected a series of photos of pre-existing signage. These signs are called trailblazer signs. Now, not to bore you, but there's this absolutely stunning document that's called the MUTCD, the Manual Uniform, or the Uniform Manual for Uniform Traffic Control Devices. Yeah, it is the worst read that you'll ever get your hands on. I loaded the PDF of it on my iPad, and it weighed 7 pounds more. That's how big this thing is. But this document came out by the United States Department of Transportation, and what it does is it sets standards for how all these signs are treated. And with signs like this that they call trailblazer signs, what they've decided is that those signs really should only have a maximum of 3 destinations on them if they are intended to be scaled for vehicles. Because if they're any more than that, a vehicle can't see them. Now, if they're pedestrian oriented, then you can put much more on there. But you can see this particular one shows 5 different options. I mean, this is interesting. If we look at this, well, I don't want to be overly negative. There's actually some really good things going on here. First of all, let's talk about what's right here. What's right here is these obviously have some age on it. So when they were done, they were probably done relatively early on in the lifespan of communities doing wayfinding signage. That's a good thing. Obviously, they're prominently branded with the town seal, therefore making those signs unique to this community. That's great. They chose to, include both Ware, Mass, and the established date. Now, this right here, this might seem a little odd. No left turn ahead, as in the format of a destination sign. But I will say one of the great things that this is doing is that is an intentional effort to reduce sign clutter by taking something that might have been put on an independent sign. I'm not sure that we would really do this like this anymore, but the thing is, this shows some good strategy in what's going on. Over time, it's just changed a little. So again, five recommendations there, 4 destinations here. We used these signs to identify what the community had already defined as destinations that were important to travel to. And we went through and we marked current locations of all those signs. And I think T literally of every single one of them. And then also doing things like announcing entry into historic districts. And you can see when you go into that historic district signage, it's completely different. So it doesn't necessarily feel like part of a cohesive system, feels like a completely different sign. The next thing that he did was he went through and he studied traffic counts so that he could know where those key decision-making points are. And then, I know this is a thrilling slide for everybody. What we actually see here is every dot that you see in red is a defined destination. And then everything in green is a proposed sign marker. So while he was here, not only was he able to simplify it down into the simplified destination list, he was also able to locate where all those signs would go and which destinations and directions would be included in each sign. So for the most part, the thinking of that signage system is done. Now, he wanted to make sure to introduce some other really important concepts, and that was you can consolidate Department of Transportation signage into something that's more appropriate and something that kind of sits on your identity. So here what he's showing is he's simply showing the consolidation of highway signage, which typically right now each one would be on their own pole and would be 3 separate panels on that pole. Now he has consolidated into one sign, one panel on a background of that brand color. Then in addition, one of the other things that he wanted to talk a little bit about was gateway signage. And a lot of times what we do is we go out and we create gateway signs at our corporate limits. And we say, hey, we're glad you're here. And then we don't say anything else. That's the last communication. So he wanted to show not only gateway style treatments where you can kind of make that front door impression, but then he wanted to also illustrate how that system continues all the way through the community. I'm going to go through these real quick. This right here is what we call a pole-mounted gateway sign. Now, a lot of times big gateways happen at those corporate limits. Pole-mounted gateways happen when the experience transitions, when the feeling of the place changes. So as you enter into the Mill Yards district, you might have a gateway sign. As you enter into a historic district or your historic core or west, you might have those gateway signs. These are very, very affordable to do. That's one of the great things about the format, and it makes it easy for you to announce and say you're now entering a different place or a special place. Then the next 2 are the Trailblazers, and we see 2 different sizes, one scaled for higher speeds, one scaled for lower speeds. luckily, because of the dynamic in your community, for the most part, you're going to have a sign that's intended to go on a highway, and then you're going to have all the others. So you probably will only really have 2 different speed variations, I'm thinking. Then from there, we're also seeing just additional signage that could appear. One of the most important signs in any system is the public parking sign. Now, believe it or not, people have started to be blind of a simple public parking sign. By bringing them into this overall system, what we're doing is we're creating a seamless experience for a visitor. They're being welcomed into the community, they're being welcomed into a district, they're working their way to a destination, and then they're being told this is where we would like for you to stop, transition into a pedestrian, and explore our community. Then also just up here, we see some additional type signs. These are different building mounted markers and that kind of thing, but you can see it creates a design foundation that connects the dots. Now, signage is hugely important, but one of the really great visual tools in a community is street banners. Now, a lot of people think the street banners are pretty, and that's why we put them up. Street banners can actually be extremely strategic. They can be used to tell people about amenities and attractions that exist in other parts of the community. They can be used to market events that might be going on. And one of the big things that happens as a byproduct of those, they actually slow traffic down. Believe it or not, we're activity in the urban corners visual tone causes people to slow down. It triggers this ideal perception that you're in a place where vehicle pedestrians coexist, and studies have shown that cars will slow down when they go into places that have systems. So what I did with you was I showed us where you can use those custom illustrations and you kind of change your colors up. This is endless opportunities here, truly are limitless. So, you know, as you start to see all that stuff come together, then finally we kind of come around the one bend and we talk about advertising. And advertising is one of the ways that we're going to tell the story. And I want to give some props to Jack, first of all, before I jump in, because he did some amazing photography that we were able to utilize as we came through and created these ads to help tell the story of the community. So what you're going to see over the next couple of slides, 20 slides or so, is a mixture of some of his photography and some of our photography that our team took on site. But the big thing that I want you to start to see is I want you to start to see the tone, the confidence, and the simplicity in which we start to tell this message. Because if you talk to people right now and say, what's there to do in Ware? The general citizen says, there's nothing to do in Ware. Now, you all are involved. You know the right answers. But what we're trying to do is combat that easy negative. So we created this overall look and feel where across the top, we have this headline that asks a question: where to go for a scenic bike ride? This is where. To go for great music? This is where. A quiet paddle? Where to go for breathtaking? This is where. You know, and the thing that's great about a format like this is it works everything from an absolutely fabulous, you know, overlook view down to a Little League field. Type experiences that are the things that would cultivate a visitor to come to the community. These are the type images and mindsets that will help to cultivate new residents, potential investors. They tell your story, and you might see, you know, in some of this, whether we're talking about some of the stuff that happens at Quabbin Reservoir, whether we're talking about things like the covered bridge and that kind of stuff, we absolutely know that we could get into the technicalities of what logistically exists in your corporate boundaries or outside your corporate boundaries. The thing is, you are a regional hub, and people associate things in the region to you, it's okay to own them. It's okay to own stuff that might not legally be right there. It's not like your house where you got to figure out, is that tree on my property or my neighbor's property? You're able to kind of, the lines are all hazy because visitors, they have no clue what jurisdictional lines are, and they don't care. So again, showing off those different experiences, those different opportunities, showing off some of the historic assets that you have. I had the opportunity to, Tracy and I toured the stone mill. It is one of the most amazing buildings I think I've ever been in. And I mean, the walls are like almost 2 feet thick. So literally you stand inside and you look out the window and it's like you're looking into a fireplace hearth. And you know, stuff like that is a part of your character, and it's still contributing today. It's a home to business. So, you know, being able to kind of tell those stories, being able to share the amenities that you have. This was as I walked around at Grenville Park.
I'm assuming the 40 code.
They can. What these particular, I will say, the QR codes that are on these right now, they actually simply send to a destination landing site. And to be honest with you, depending on the tactic and depending on where the things come to light, you can do a couple different things with the QR codes. If we did with the historic walking guide, one of the things that we would probably see in there is we might see a QR code that gets entered in, or we might see some sort of way to integrate QR codes into those historic sites. So as you're walking around, you can get that data. When it comes to print advertising, one of the great things about QR codes is you have the ability to actually change that code for each and every publication. So you can actually use your QR to measure how many people are passing through. They can actually go to the same page, but you create a different pass through for them. So you can measure effectiveness of, if I put this in there, are people using it? You know, QR code technology is still, people are still a little iffy. I was telling somebody the other day, I said, you know, one of the best things that QR codes do when you integrate them in, tell people that you're smart enough to know how to use QR codes. And I know that's kind of silly, but I'm not, the numbers have been declining on usage of those, but there's still some very, very valid ways that they can be used. Again, you know, being able to kind of draw in assets around the region, obviously the tower over at the reservoir, but then also being able to go into the stores and kind of capturing some of that personality of the things that you offer. Now, you know, when you look at the overall retail of the entire town, you've got a pretty interesting mix. You've got some good stuff here. You have to work a little bit. You got to put a little bit of effort in to be able to see it all and to do it all. It's not, you know, we haven't made it as easy as some other communities where everything is consolidated in one place that's easy to walk in, but that's fine. That's fine. That just means there's plenty of room to grow. So being able to show the different product mix, show the different things, and I mean, even things like factory fitness. I mean, 12,000 square feet in an old mill building that's turned into a fitness center is pretty cool. And the space I thought was really, really nice. As you can tell, I love to work out every day. So no, I'm kidding. You know, it's one of those things when I went in, I mean, not only did I immediately say, oh God, I should walk in gyms more often than this, but it's like, man, this is a really, really cool environment and cool setting for this type business. And again, you know, just showing off, I mean, this is one of those things that the first time I saw it, when I came into the community and I turned on the south and I was heading down, my eyes had been caught by something else. I think maybe I had seen, as I was driving in, I think I saw South Street School. There was something that said, oh, I need to go down South Street. I need to go down that way and see what's down there. And I can remember I took the turn and then I just kind of glanced at it. I was like, there's a waterfall, right? That's cool. It's so, you know, being able to kind of integrate that in and just craft this overall message. Now, I will tell you, this our team really dug in on how do we craft the right direction. You have what we call a skeptical public. And the skeptical public is going to be fueled by a couple different situations. The moment that we start a conversation about revitalization and growth and evolution and change, if we want to, we can immediately get into a logistical conversation about the funding it takes to upgrade infrastructure, about the lack of market value or market demand combined with the amount of inventory that's available and all this kind of stuff. I can have tons of boring conversations about that stuff. But the fact is, I felt like this community needed a clean, confident, and simple way to see itself. And a simple platform that would allow them to take it and essentially run with it. Because of the simplicity of the system, it would make it very, very easy for businesses to simply roll this in and use this as they start to tell their story. Downtown retail or any retail throughout the community. I'm sorry to say downtown so much. That's kind of my mindset. But I mean, really, you have a community that operates as a single retail place. So there isn't that distinction between the two. But being able to have that simple system, being able to have those connective tools, creates a very, very easy platform to spring from. So with that, that's what I was able to create over the past 24 hours since our meeting wrapped up yesterday. Now it's your turn. I'd love to hear a little bit about your thoughts, the things that seem to make sense, the things that we might need to go back and look at and think about a little bit more. Because again, like I say, we considered a lot of stuff, so there might be something that you're thinking that we thought through and we came up with a reason why we thought that let's not do this, let's do this instead. If you want to ask about that, that's great. And then again, if there's something that I know there's stuff we missed, I know there's stuff that we didn't get time to design or didn't get to. And Aaron always does a great job of taking a little list for me of additional pieces. Our goal here is to create as many tools as the community needs so that you can go through and you can immediately hit the ground running. Organizations, institutions, that kind of thing. So with that, it's your turn. Yes, sir.
I think you did an excellent job. The only comment I have, the Quabbin Reservoir is not being part of Ware. That is Ware.
Okay.
Actually, it's within the town
Gotcha.
boundaries. So
Okay.
it is, and people don't realize.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's an easy tweak. Thanks for pointing that out.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
The word somewhere worth seeing versus a place worth. Was the catch because where and where?
The catch was because those three campaigns were all focusing in on that. Yes. Now I will say this. I'm going to be completely blunt with you. That was why we went with somewhere. That there's nothing about that's magic. So if we decide that we need to tweak that and create a line that is more solid, I'm absolutely with you on it. The campaigns emerged first, and then the connective tissue of that tagline emerged second. So again, I think that I'm kind of picking up on the same thing you are. So what I'd like to, let me explain, what we wanted to do. With the line, with that tagline, here's what we know we need to convey. We need to convey that this is a place that is worthy of rediscovery. This is a place that is special, even though you might have heard it's not. That's blunt, but that's a hard concept to kind of get your arms wrapped around. So, that's what we wanted to do. A place worth seeing. I kind of liked the idea because there was the wordplay in what we were doing. And the thing that I was trying to do was I was trying to take advantage of the wordplay without being cute.
Okay.
What we don't want to do is we don't want to overdo that, because I made the point yesterday, I think, or maybe on Tuesday night. You don't want to open the door too much of, oh, let's do all these cute things with the word where, because then you open yourself up to somebody saying beware. And so you almost to a certain degree, knowing that you have a public that is primed to pounce with negativity. And I will say, no matter what we land on, when it first hits, people are going to pounce with that negativity because it is easier to squash progress than it is to accept the fear of potentially failing. So that gut instinct is, let's just go ahead and knock it down before it starts so we don't have to deal with the reality that we tried it and it didn't work. Yeah.
Can I just see, did you use the same color palette on all of them as far as like the box?
Yes, yeah. And that was more so an issue of time than it was.
No, I get it. What I'm having an issue with visually
Mm-hmm.
is the tagline.
Okay.
Somewhere we're saving.
Yeah.
It's blending to me.
Gotcha. Yeah. No, I think you're probably right. And it could easily go with one of those darker that's going to pop.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. No, I'm with you. Yes, ma'am.
What's the process? How do we convince people, and I know you're showing us this, but how do you roll this out so people in town start thinking more positive?
That's great.
What's the process for the next steps?
That's a great
That's
question.
us, Carol. That's us.
Well, okay, so part of the reason that we take the approach that we do is because we want to arm as many of the people who are already doing things with tools that will make it easier for them to do what they've already done. So like people that are already putting on events, if they adopt some of this imagery, they kind of bring all of their hard work underneath this umbrella automatically. Now, here's what I would warn against. I want to start by telling you what not to do instead of what to do. A lot of times a community goes through this process, and when they get to resolution on the final product and they green light it and they're ready to go, the next thing they want to do is they want to do a big launch event because people love to go to parties. So it's like, let's do a launch. And then what ends up happening is all these important people stand in front of everybody and say, look at what we've done. We're so excited about it. Isn't it great? And then months go by and people don't see anything else come out of it. So it feels like it gets a slow start or it's dead before it starts. So many times what I recommend as soon as we make the resource package available to the community as a whole, then we want to go out and we want to start kind of organization by organization, person by person, group by group, and start to get people integrating that into what they already do. And we call it a rolling launch. Things start to come out as they're ready. And, it's funny. I mean, I work in some communities where literally a week and a half after I'm there, they start asking for logos because they got stuff in line. They're like, oh, well, we're getting ready to do an ad and we'd love to go ahead and integrate that if we can. You do a rolling launch, and then after you hit a point where you feel like, believe it or not, there's a lot of stuff out there already, then you've hit a time where you can do that celebration. In a community like this, you might consider doing some sort of launch or announcement at halftime at a football game, or something where people are already gathered. Celebrate that, at a place where they're already gathered. And what you'll start to find is that the momentum will build. It's the combination of the early adopters with the availability of the resources. And everything that we create will literally be as easy to share as sharing a link. And somebody will be able to download the full system. It's going to have a style guide document that will tell them how to use everything, how not to use it, how to use make sure that the colors are going to be consistent and all that kind of stuff. So it's a real simple document, but it sets everything in play so that you can consistently roll that out. But, really, when you get right down to it, there really are 4 or 5 main organizations in the community that if you can get them on board, the bulk of the message that's leaving the community will be covered. So that's one of the things that I'm really optimistic here about. I think if I'm being realistic, the thing that scares me the most is people being too willing to cave in on the opinions of people that played no part in the process. The ones that are quick to say, if you sat through, if you sat through this meeting and you're like, I hate the tagline, it's horrible. Well, guess what? Her opinion is far more valuable and carries more worth than a person who walked through the door right this second and looked at it and said, oh, that tagline's stupid. Because you've heard the strategy, you've seen the system, you understand the interconnection, and then you're making that critique, and that critique comes with wanting it to get better.
So basically, you're saying as we move off this whole process, our next event.
Absolutely. Just start to
So
roll
for
it out.
next fall festival, we would just use it, not
Exactly.
necessarily announce that we're using it, just go forward, move
Exactly.
forward and see what kind of
Yep.
reception that we get.
Exactly. And you go through some of the tools we'll be giving you as we're going to go ahead and have everything formatted for like profile imagery for social media. So, you could go through and you could implement that on social media. You could integrate in some
Something
imagery.
as simple as
Yeah, absolutely.
loving it.
And then, I will say there have been some communities that have done some kind of cool things. Once they've hit a good saturation point, they might do an announcement of some kind, and then they'll follow that up with something like the banners going up. So then all of a sudden you do an announcement, and then immediately after that, there's this huge visual impression that is now laid down in the community. I had one community that literally I did a launch in North Carolina, and I presented the brand, and that night, Public Works put 120 banners up throughout the community. So there was this brand launch, the logo appeared in the newspaper the next morning, and people went out of their house and the banners were all throughout town. So that was kind of a dynamic delivery saying, we said we're going to do it and we're showing you we're doing it. So that's the big thing, is just being able to kind of match them up.
Worth seeing, because a lot of people travel on Route 9 with their antique cars and their bikes, and, just seeing that makes them, well, let's go through,
Yeah.
They're headed that direction anyway, so.
I like the tagline. I think it's fitting.
And if it's worth seeing, then it's worth living here.
The
Right.
thought process behind that too, just like everything else with the message, is kind of two-sided. Again, somewhere worth seeing, the power of that comment and that tagline to use that as a platform to reintroduce the folks that may have a negative view of the place. It is somewhere worth being, it's somewhere worth living, it's somewhere worth seeing.
Somewhere worth
You should be proud
investing.
of it.
Yeah, I mean, it does.
I tend to agree, because I think it's going to be a re-engagement of what they have actually put aside as, oh,
Hard
Mhm.
for what we know we have.
Exactly.
To have all this negative out there and combat it and say, hey, did you forget about this, or did you forget about that, or
Right.
how about
And with
this?
the multiple boxes, the multiple pictures, there's multiple aspects.
And the thing that's nice about a system like this is expandable. It's almost infinitely expandable.
So I was gonna say,
So-
the coffin's not on one of those blocks.
Right, and part of that came down to the fact that sitting down here and trying to get as much work done in the time period I have and illustrating these, by hand. I mean, I was telling the team earlier today, I spent more time drawing things on this project than any community I've ever worked in the past, 12, 13 years, 400 communities. I spent more time to actually, and I will say, there are shortcuts to make something like this happen, but it doesn't look as good. And it doesn't have the exact same character. I felt like you deserved the harder. You deserve the thing that took more time. But, you know, you can easily see where, I mean, we could have the library tower on here. We'd have something from Quabbin. We can have something from, you know, churches. We might have a combination of several church spires all in one. That kind of, so, you know, and you can then start to have it grow and evolve over time. If you then down the road, let's say that you wanted to do a campaign that was purely targeted outdoors, then all these might move away from the physical place and might move to things like biking and fishing and, you know, those different imageries. So the simplicity of the square design and the holder really kind of creates that infinite expandability, which I think is really, really good for a community like yours. Because to be honest with you, if you keep on at the momentum you're at right now, you will be developing new attractions that we don't know to market yet. So you need to have that ability to easily take them and roll them in. Good, good. Any other comments?
One question.
Yes, ma'am.
This is probably more for everybody else in the room than it is. Organization called Ware.
Okay.
And I don't know whether
To be, it was
people are
A-Ware.
going,
You were,
yeah, I don't
Aware.
know whether people in seeing this one are gonna wonder whether it's associated with the other one, so.
Gotcha, that's-
More of a question. for
I
you
don't think
guys.
so, Karen, because I think enough time has elapsed where unless people who are part of the present business association.
Well, I'll tell you what.
That's
let-
my feeling, I don't know.
The logo was different too.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Well, let me tell you this, because I think that's a great point. And that kind of stuff is the stuff that we would never be able to pick up on. You know, so what I would say with that is we've got a couple other ideas, you know, up our sleeve in terms of that educational piece. As we kind of go through this and as we move into this refinement phase of that, that might be something that we ask you to kind of shop around a little and just get the impression from folks. And if we do find that it triggers, you know, the thoughts of that previous organization, we can easily modify that. That's not a big deal at all. But that's a great point of bringing that expertise and kind of merging it with ours.
And can you just go over, I know you told me a story earlier about how colleges always have something, a different logo for their athletics, and that's on purpose, and why?
Yeah, and that's so what we've done here. If you step back and you look at the 20,000-foot view, we have introduced a tool that did not exist. Everything that you had up until this point to market this community were all organizational identities. And the organizations were attempting to use their organizational identity to promote the place. So what we've done is we've created this destination logo, and it's a shared non-governmental logo. It is an entity of the place. And you know, the connection with universities is what they do is they have an academic logo and an athletic logo. Now, oftentimes they share colors. Virtually every single time they share colors. Color is the big connector. But you might see vastly different graphics and typefaces in athletics from academics. Many times on the academic side, you might see the school seal or crest or some sort of very kind of ornate academic looking thing. And then on the athletic side, you're going to see the mascot. You're going to see the animals. You're going to see the pride. You're going to see the things that people buy, you know, boxer shorts with it on. So the reason that they do that is a couple reasons. First of all, if we talk about the business side of things, there's more flexibility and easy adaptation on the athletic side. And the reason that exists is so there's a constant merchandising market. Now, on the academic side, those things have a longer lifespan. There's more investment that goes into it. If you're doing signage on a college campus, you're doing, you're doing that academic stuff. How that relates here is you now have this destination identity, and the destination identity is the thing that grows and changes with the movement of the economy, with the growth of the amenities and the connection that we have with the potential, visitors, residents, investors, and our current residents as well. Town is a government, and they're responsible for things, and they levy taxes, and they make decisions and all that kind of stuff. So, what we've done is we've formalized that identity of the governmental body while creating this a little bit of freedom for the destination identity to kind of exist and adapt at a different pace. Because honestly, you don't want the town to have to go back and redesign and reinvest in all these things every time the marketing message needs to adapt because consumers have changed. So we're really kind of positioning the investment from the town side to be able to be a good, long-lasting investment, while also positioning you have an adaptive tool for the kind of economy growing tactics. Yes, sir.
Ben, I'm not sure how to pose this question. We have a publication which is showing what Ware has. Okay. We're also, discussing in another area of renovating downtown, both physically and visually, et cetera. How do those two concepts blend or go together? I know some things that we would like to do may not happen for 5 years. And some may start to happen, like signage could start to happen very quickly. How does that all play in your experiences around the country?
Okay, that is, I hope that my answer is going to do the question justice, because it's a good one. The connectivity between all those things, everything from having a publication to tell your stories, to that long-term investment and reinvesting in the heart of your community and creating if we're being completely honest, I don't think anybody here would argue that your historic downtown has far more potential to feel like a vibrant, experiential-driven destination than the area out next to Mexicali. There's nothing that this area right here, that doesn't mean that there's anything bad about this, but it's just not made to do the same thing. So the big factor that we're trying to do, and where all paths converge, is on what I call the creation of cool. It is the fostering of a cool factor. And I have communities a lot of times that talk about how they want to position themselves as being a retirement community, because they have come to the decision that retirees are the way to go because they don't have kids in our school system. We're going to be a retiree community. So my comment to that is, the best way to be a retiree community is to be the type of community that those people's grandkids want to live in. That's what a retiree community looks like. And creating that cool factor, creating the kind of place that somebody feels smart for going there. They feel smart for knowing about it. That's one of the biggest advantages that Ware has right now. And it's kind of the positive spin of that negative perception about drugs and economy and all that kind of stuff. You have the ability to make a person feel like they have found and uncovered a gem. And when they have that experience for themselves, then their likelihood that they're going to tell others about it is through the roof. So cultivating the cool, telling the stories, and kind of preserving that sense of discovery among those people, I think it all kind of fits in perfectly. Downtown should be an experience driver. And the magazine gives you the opportunity to start telling about experiences. And you know, a lot of times we actually see magazines as kind of the catalyst for helping people figure out how to connect the dots. So, you know, I think that you know, one of the cool things about it is it's like the story about biking, the reservoir is an easy story. The story about eating at, you know, Crystal Springs after a long morning ride, you've now taken a story that connects the dots. So that's kind of the thing I would hope would happen.
Thank you.
Sure.
Could you move the screen back to the Quabbin picture? It's hard looking at the screen.
Sorry.
Well, some people came in late and then.
Yes, ma'am.
On the tagline, somewhere we're seeing, how did you choose seeing?
You want the hard the sophisticated answer? All right. Well, I will say this: in the tourism world, there are a lot of words in the past decade that have been dramatically overused. Discovery, experience, all that kind of stuff. Knowing that, it doesn't mean that you don't use them. It just means that it's kind of like you got to know that it's exactly the right word. If I'm being completely honest, discovery was a word that I was playing around with on the front end. The reason that I finally landed on seeing was alliteration. And that sounds hokey, but I mean, legitimately, it rolls off the tongue a little better. But again, you know, the other thing that I liked about it was I liked this concept, and I think that Aaron actually said it earlier with his comment. If you do it right, the simple start of the phrase gives you an interesting opportunity for expandability, the somewhere where, you know, or I mean the somewhere worth investing, somewhere worth living, you know, that kind of stuff. So knowing that there was that expandability of using different phrases, it kind of went back in my mind to knowing that somewhere worth seeing looked good and had that alliteration. So again, I wish I could say there was more rocket science to it, but it was, you know, I kind of pulled the trigger on that one because I felt like it was solid.
Well, with that.
Right, right, absolutely.
We can change the signs, welcome to sun.
Yeah, yeah. All right.
You've arrived.
Well, I tell you what, folks, I always, when we have meetings this time of night, I know that I'm kind of the last thing between you and dinner. So I tell you what, I've kept you about 20 minutes over what I said I would. So it's 10 till 7 at this point. So I want to go ahead and wrap, and of course, Aaron and I will be here. So if you've got anything else you want to talk with us about, we'll be here and we'd love to hear from you. But I want to thank you all. I want to thank you all for your support. I want to thank you for all the time that you gave us over the course of the week and of course, all the feedback. Talk real quickly about next steps in this process. Now that we have presented what we feel like is the appropriate starting point for the conversation, what we're going to do is we're going to have a period of a couple weeks, and we'll be coordinating with Tracy and everybody on kind of setting up how that is. But what we move into is we move into the refinement phase. You know, we've recorded this. It's going to be on TV. It'll be accessible on YouTube, and gives you the opportunity to kind of sink into it again, revisit it after a couple days, and then see if there are any refinements, any things that you think might want to, hey, would you look at this? What do you think about this word? Maybe tweak this color, that kind of stuff. And then what we'll do is we'll pull all of those refinements together. They'll get sent over to me, and I get the fun task of going through and say, that's a really great idea, and that's an idea I'm allowed to ignore, and that kind of thing. But, you know, realistically, I mean, I think one of the things that we always have to remember at the end of it is that, you know, this entire process is a process of the blending of expertise. You all are the experts of Ware, not me. So I know a lot about design, and I know a lot about the tools and tactics that communities use to grow their economies. So this process is one of blending those expertises and landing on a product that we're all really excited about deploying. So After that refinement phase, those refinements get passed on to us and we create a final product. Every single logo you see is yours. We purchase the typefaces that you see for the community. So we will pass that on. We'll do the style guide like I described, all of the photos, and I know with Jack's, we've got Jack's photos in there, but then also with all the stuff that we did, all that stuff becomes accessible. And so now all of a sudden we have this library. Now in addition to that, one of the things that Jack and I talked about is we're going to take a stab at also creating something. We've done this a couple other places. It's a really cool, helpful tool. It's called a photo inventory. And what it does is it simply points out this idea that this is the photo that we want to have in the collection. We want to make sure that we have all this. A lot of times, those of us that plan events, we get so hung up on planning the event that we don't document it. We don't have any photos of it. It's like, man, we threw this great event, but I can't prove it to anybody because I don't have any photos. So by having that inventory, it allows us to always kind of go, it's like, all right, I want a snow shot of this building and this building and this building. I want a fall shot of this and this and this. So that'll be a pretty interesting tool. But again, from us, we sign over the copyright to the community. There is none of this, oh, well, you want that? Well, you got to come back and now you're on the hook for it. This is a open source deployment. That's the way it works in a community, by giving people access to the resources. So it's a pretty cool process. And the thing that I will say is the momentum. I think you'll be surprised at how many people in the community want to get their hands on the tools. I constantly have communities say, man, I didn't realize that so many people would immediately roll this in. It's almost like we don't even have to ask, they come asking us. It's kind of cool. So, all right, well, y'all, thank you so much. Thanks for your time. Thanks for your attention.